Okay, so I think this is probably going to be a small group, and if this is going to be recorded, so by any chance people show up a little late, they can kind of catch up. So I think we're just going to go ahead and get started until we kind of got to get a little close together here.
We can kind of one shift out
There
here
we
a little
go.
bit. There we go.
Yeah. So anyways, I just want to, most of everybody here knows me already, but I just still want to introduce myself. My name is Casey Harriet. I am the R3 coordinator for the state of Oklahoma Conservation. Wow, I said that all weird. ODWC, Oklahoma Department of Conservation, Wildlife Conservation. And we also have Tell Judkins here. He is the upland game biologist. Upland game. We just had upland. It is upland bird. Yeah, upland game. Sorry, we had the big game biologist yesterday. We've been pumping these out. So my brain is just not catching up. So
try to make this one as painless.
There we go. I am so looking forward to handing this over to you at this point. So before we get started, we do have Jacob Harriet, the Lincoln County Game Warden, on here as well. He Tell did a great job of in this presentation that you're about to view, going through regulations. So I'm just we're not going to have Jacob go through any more, but he will be there at the end to answer any law enforcement questions you might have. So if you guys have questions as we go through, just same as any other time, we just post them in the chat and then I will field them to our experts at the end. So without further ado, I am going to share my screen and hand it over to Tell to start on this great presentation. I guess we start at the beginning, don't we?
Yeah. Just get the fast forward.
There, little preview. Don't look too hard.
There we go. All right, awesome. Well,
I'm gonna change us to. Oops. I'm gonna change this out of the way so we can see.
Yeah,
okay.
Sounds great.
Perfect.
If there's any major questions that come up throughout this, feel free to stop me. If it's something major or if it's something that can wait to the end, then we'll hold off till the end and be able to get to these questions.
I don't have to have everybody mute themselves in the background so we don't have any feedback. I think that would be Jacob that needed to mute himself.
It happens. It happens.
Mute all just in case.
All right, great. I think we're still live.
Okay, we're good.
Good deal. So first, I want to say good afternoon and thank you for tuning in. These Learn to Hunt seminars are recorded, like Casey said, so these will go up on our website so they can be a resource for everybody to learn more about quail and pheasant hunting as we go on through the year and season starts off. So we will figure out what here. There we go. So today I'm going to try to talk briefly on 5 topics, which is going to be Oklahoma's birds, the weather, the outlook, the regulations, and then just the general basics of quail and pheasant and just general upland hunting. So usually this is where I would ask how many people know how many quail there are in North America, but I've already put the answer up there. So there's actually 7 different species of quail in North America. 6 of them, there are huntable populations, and then we also have the endangered masked bobwhite in the desert Southwest. As far as what species we have here in Oklahoma, we do not have the Montezumas or Californias or mountains or Gambel's quails. We have the scale quail or blue quail, as they're called, and then of course the northern bobwhite quail. On the pheasant side of things, pheasant were originally introduced into North America from China in the 1800s. They were first introduced in Oklahoma about 1920, and we had a huntable population by about 1948. I put up both a male and a female pheasant here. We'll go over it a little bit more in the regs, but only the males can be harvested from pheasant. So it's definitely a great chance to talk about your hunter education and making sure that you've identified your target before you pull that trigger. So we'll dive right into it here. Now that we've covered what bird species we're even talking about, we can now dive into the weather. So I don't think anyone would argue that Oklahoma has a pretty wild climate. The weather in Oklahoma can be, well, pretty temperamental. If we look back a year ago today, we actually had about 97.5% of the state in severe, extreme, or exceptional drought. Droughts like this, they don't make life easy for anything, including a quail. If we fast forward to August of this year, we got down to about 8.25% of the state in those same categories. You'll note that the areas in the Southwest and the North Central, they maintained that drought, and we also had some moderate drought throughout the South. If we bring that up to more recent, where last week we had about 33.9 or 34% of the state in those categories. And those areas in the Southwest, the South, and the North Central definitely are the areas where we see the drought. Now, I bring up drought when we're talking about hunting because areas that have been impacted by negative weather can make it harder to hunt birds just because of bad scenting conditions for the dogs or just making it harder to find birds in general. And that brings us to the outlook, trying to figure out what's going on in our bird populations. So this is our October surveys. Every year we do roadside surveys for our quail in August and October. This is the trend since 1990 of our quail populations based on those roadside surveys. Definitely not a huge spike year, but we did see a 38% increase in our populations according to our surveys this year. We're still not up to our 10-year average, which would be that red line, or our long-term average, which would be that orange line. We can also break these down and look at them a little bit differently if we were to just look at one region at a time. For instance, this is the Northwest region where we had our biggest bump this year as far as our roadside survey numbers go. We saw that the numbers in the Northwest region went from right about 3.8, somewhere in that area, to a little over 6. So almost doubling the number that we saw last year, almost getting those numbers up to the 10-year average and almost to the long-term average. I would bet that you could probably find my truck somewhere in Northwest Oklahoma come opening day. That's where I would definitely point folks to go. On the pheasant side of things, we do crow call surveys in the spring and then an August brood survey as well. Those spring crow call surveys, we actually saw a little bit of a reduction this year. And I attribute that mostly to kind of when we started to get spring rains this year. Those rains tended to hit right around the time we were doing these surveys and after. And so the birds really hadn't started calling yet. But when we got to August doing our brood surveys, we actually saw a little bit of a bump in the numbers. And those brought those numbers up actually higher than they've been probably the last 4 years. So moving on a little bit, talking about hunter participation in harvest. And I really like to talk on points like this, especially when we're able to do something like this, where we're trying to get some new hunters into the fold. In 1986, we had about 2.5 million hunters for just quail hunters. I'm sorry, I said that wrong, read the wrong side of my graph. About 110,000 quail hunters, that's right, harvesting about 2.5 million birds. If we fast forward to modern day, in 2021, we had about 20,000 hunters harvesting about 250,000 birds. So our hunter numbers have definitely declined, and that's not something that I want to see maintained as a trend. And that's where these R3 efforts really come in strong, and we can really do something cool about it. We see similar shifts in our pheasant hunters. Pheasant hunting has never been a super popular, like diehard hunting season for many Oklahoma hunters, but we do have a lot that are very passionate about it. So I also enjoy getting out and chasing a few pheasant come fall. But we can see those trends in harvest and hunters there, and these are from our game harvest survey that we do here in-house with the Department of Wildlife. One of the cool things that we can also see with that survey is that even though our hunter numbers have decreased and our bird populations have decreased, on average, you as a hunter, your hunt hasn't changed too much, according to the data. So, and if we look at the mean days of field, so how many days each season a hunter spends in the field for our quail hunters, in 1986, we averaged about 7 days of field. In 2021, we averaged about 7 days of field. So even though our bird populations have decreased, hunters are still getting just as much opportunity as they had back in 1986. It would be a lot more fun if we had more birds. And on that, our daily harvest has really only dropped about a bird per hunter day on average. So really not, definitely not the extreme shifts like we saw on those previous graphs. Yeah. So 2015, 2016, I think we'll actually talk a little bit more about that spike here in just a second. I think that's the basics. If not, I've got another slide we can bring up and talk about that. So let's shift gears a little bit on regulations. And like I said, at the end, we can come back and circle that. I think I've got a slide here on that. So when it comes to regulations, if you go to our general website and you click on our Quail page and you click on Quail regulations, you're going to get this pop-up that's on the right side of your screen right now. So we'll kind of step through these one by one and talk about them and go from there. So we'll start with the license requirements. Residents are required to have a hunting license. This could be your annual hunting license, a 3-day, a week, a 5-day, any of the hunting licenses will cover your quail hunting. If you're a non-resident, you have to have the non-resident annual hunting license to quail hunt in Oklahoma. Skip forward too far. So our season dates for quail will open on November 11th this year, so just a couple weeks away, and it'll close on February 15th of next winter, or this coming winter, I suppose. The daily limit is 10 birds that you can harvest each day, and you can have 20 in your possession after the first day. So come the end of the season, you can have a total of 20 birds in your freezer to be able to carry into the spring, so you can make some more of those delicious jalapeno poppers or whatever you like to do with them. Legal means of take is definitely kind of gets convoluted once you get down that far, but generally most folks are going to be using a shotgun to be able to harvest quail. That could be a conventional or a muzzle loading shotgun, but you can also use things like a longbow if you really want to challenge, or legal raptors if you're a falconer. If you go through our general hunting regulations, it'll give you more details on what each of those kind of mean. For pot shooting, that's always one that raises some questions. Why are we worrying about shooting a skillet when we're out hunting and we were on about hunt birds? So this would be a picture of how birds would roost overnight. And it's a really great picture that actually used to be in our regulation booklet until we kind of scrunched down a little bit over the years. But this is what we're referring to when we say a pot. So at no time can any quail or covey be shot while they're resting on the ground. So that would commonly be called pot shooting. So you would have to wait until these birds got up on the wing and to be able to take a legal shot at harvesting those birds.
Obviously.
Yeah, you would take out most of them.
Chance.
Exactly.
You remove part of it.
That kind of goes into the whole ethics question and the sportsman's pledge of being good to the resource on top of going out and harvesting the resource. So all of us as hunters and conservationists want to make sure there's more birds for the next person and more birds for your next time out. So that's why that pot shooting is illegal. On public lands, these are just a couple of random ones that I pulled down. These two graphics are from kind of the back end of the regulations booklet that has all the specific rules for public lands. So on our wildlife management areas, for instance, on Cimarron Hills, if you scroll down, you can see right there at the bottom that quail season is closed for the first 9 days of deer gun season, and their hunting hours close at noon daily. And then non-resident hunting on that property is closed from February 1st through 15th. Similarly, on Lexington Wildlife Management Area in the central part of our state, quail are included in this chunk at the bottom, and it is closed from the opening day of deer archery season through the first 9 days of deer gun season. So all of those little specific area use regulations are really good to be able to look at before going out into the field. There's nothing worse than being on the wrong spot and having to have a chat with a game warden. I think Warden Harriet would agree with that. Shooting hours are actually something that's pretty easy to figure out here in Oklahoma. If you haven't already downloaded our app, you can download that in any of the major app stores. It's called Go Outdoors OK, and it should look like this. The logo for the app is our actual logo, so it'll look like the logo that's on the top side of that. And you can simply click on that sunrise, sunset, and it'll pop up and tell you exactly when your sunrise is for that location and your sunset. You can actually click on the change my location up at the top and make it where, I'm going to be in Northwest Oklahoma, so I can make it Woodward and still view that from my home. You can also change the date there with the calendar function. So all good things to have when you're needing to figure out what that official sunrise is. The next little section is hunter orange. Now, anytime that there is an open gun season for any other animal out there, you're going to need to at least have on an orange cap or an orange vest. This is my typical look whenever I'm quail hunting. I try to wear as much orange as I can. Quail are definitely not an animal that you have to worry about them really seeing you. So it's good to stand out while you're on the prairie, especially if you're hunting with your friends or on a busy WMA like we might see this opening weekend. So you'll see that I've got on an orange hat, I've got an orange hoodie, I've got an orange vest, my dog's even in orange. So needless to say, I recommend just about as much hunter orange as you can carry. So shifting gears to look at pheasant a little bit, a majority of those rules and regulations are the same for pheasant. A couple of key differences that I want to go over with you all. And we'll start with the license requirement. So pheasant hunting simply requires a hunting license for either non-residents or residents. So whatever that hunting license may be, that will have you covered for your pheasant hunting. For pheasant season, the season starts December 1st and runs until January 31st of next year. And it only is open to those specific counties. So I'll pull that map up there. So all of the counties that are colored in, whether they're brown or yellow, are open to pheasant hunting, as well as the portions of Dewey, Blaine, Kingfisher, and Logan counties that are north of Highway 51. And really, that's the only area of Oklahoma where we see pheasant. And that's primarily due to, if you look at where they live naturally in China and Asia, the kind of southern extent of where they would exist there is about where we're at as far as on the globe. When it comes to the limits, you can harvest 2 roosters or 2 cocks daily for pheasants. So we can only harvest the males, we can't harvest the females. And we can have 4 in our possession after the first day. So come the end of season, we can have 4 pheasant in our freezer waiting to make a wonderful dish out of so we can feed our family. And there's an interesting little tag on this one that if you're hunting in 2 states, and they each have different daily limits, you can't exceed the largest number of birds that can legally be taken in one of the states. So if, say, you're kind of bouncing back and forth between Kansas and Oklahoma, and I haven't looked what their limit is this year, but let's say it's 3 for some reason, and ours is 2, you could harvest 3 as long as you could prove that at least one of them had been harvested in Kansas. If that makes sense. That might be clear as mud. Another point on pheasant is that identification that I talked about. So if we're out deer hunting, we have to make sure that we have proof of sex on that animal. So we need to leave the head and we need to leave a foot to be, or for a deer, you're going to want to leave more than a foot. But you have to have that proof that it's either a boy or a girl, or in deer, antlered or antlerless. So here with pheasant, we need to make sure that we have that proof of sex, and that could be the head or one of their foots, and one of their feet, and that has to remain attached to the body until it's reached its final destination. A couple of other little tweaks on the legal means of taking for pheasant. Again, most folks are going to be using a shotgun. You can use archery equipment. You can use those legal wrappers, and then hand-propelled missiles. That sounds fun. Yes. So that's actually like an atlatl that you would traditionally see, like in several different Native American tribes would use atlatls. Slingshots are also considered a legal method. So you can learn more about the specifics for each of those methods in our general hunting regulations.
Takes a pheasant with a hand-propelled missile or slingshot. I need to hear that story.
I'd like to see the video.
The video, the photos, I need it all, please.
For sure, for sure. So we've covered what birds we're talking about, a little bit about the weather and the outlook. We've covered the regulations. So let's move on now to the basics of quail hunting. So how do we even get into this sport? So I'll start by showing you this photo. This is kind of the dream. There's actually 4 different species that are in this one photo. So over on the background, we've got a little cottontail rabbit that's running away. On the far right-hand side, we have a small brood of pheasant, a ton of bobwhite quail that have all run out into this little roadway, and we even have a mourning dove. So being able to key in on habitat is going to be one of the biggest drivers in upland bird hunting. Being able to really figure out what they're after, whether that's cover or whether that's food, and what might be around you. So how do we quail hunt? Well, most people are going to hunt quail and other upland game birds with a bird dog. I think I've shown already 3 pictures of mine. If you guys want to keep track at your house of how many times you see my dog, his name's Carson. He's super cool. But there are a ton of different breeds and styles out there. And if you ask any person that bird hunts, they will probably say that whatever kind they use are the best bird dog. To me, as long as that dog is capable of helping you find birds every time you get in the field, you've got a pretty good bird dog. And I'm pretty happy to say that every time I've put my dog out, he's found me some birds. So I cannot complain on that. So generally you're walking around with your 4-legged companion and he goes on point. He was actually running here, but it kind of looks like he's on point. And so he's pointing, he's saying their birds are right in here, so we need to find them. And so you would approach that area that he's pointing and hope to be able to bump those birds up. And then you would get a look of something like this, where the birds have flushed. You've gotten that covey rise. So here you easily see the 4 birds above the horizon, but there are actually 2, one down in here, and then there's one still kind of coming out of the bush in there. It's really blurry. But so you have to really be able to focus in on one of those birds. So just like you were doing some clay shooting or some skeet or trap shooting, you want to focus on one of those birds and give it a little bit of lead, slowly squeeze the trigger, and you can end up with a bird in hand. And that, by all accounts, sounds super easy, but man, is it hard.
When your brain sees 6 birds,
Yeah.
you can't be decisive in that moment, which is my biggest struggle. Is picking one bird out of that, the one that you think would be the easiest. You're doing a lot of math in your brain.
Yeah, there's a lot of calculations that you're trying to run through, and ultimately the good thing about quail hunting is if you miss, which you will do, I guarantee I miss a whole lot more than I make connections with a bird. You get another opportunity. You can head on down and try to find the next covey, potentially work a few singles out of this, depending on the size of that covey, and be able to go on from there and enjoy the rest of your hunt. So what all do we need? This is one of the biggest limitations when it comes to things like quail and pheasant hunting, because compared to some of the other types of hunting, you really do need some stuff. We'll start with some sturdy boots. Everyone I recommends, tall, sturdy, strong boots. You really want ankle protection so that when you're out running through these wild prairies, you're going to get your foot hung on some stuff. You're going to make missteps. So those sturdy boots are definitely going to help you get back to the truck safely and comfortable. They definitely need to be broken in before season. The next thing that I would say is some brush pants, and those can just be some thicker pants, just to help keep some of those briars and thorns out of your legs. I also have been known to wear like snake chaps. If I think that I'm going to be in an area where I may encounter some snakes, I'll put those chaps on. But if I'm in an area that's just really thick with sand plum or cactus or any of those things, those chaps will also give me the same protection from them. Moving to the next step is the shotgun. Like I said, most folks are using shotguns to harvest these birds, and they can be just about any of the calibers that are out there. I myself carry a 20 gauge just because it's light, and the shells are a little bit lighter than a 12 gauge, so I feel like I can carry those a little bit further. All of them are pretty readily available. We definitely had a downturn in availability through COVID, but 16s, 20s, 12s, 410s, I even know a few people that get out there with a 28 gauge to try to harvest some birds. So it's doable with any of them. So you don't necessarily need a special shotgun or anything like that to be able to go after these birds. You will want a vest or a pack. Depending on the weather, I've got just a vest or I've got a full backpack that I can carry to be able to hold those shotgun shells, water, your harvest, but also any of your other supplies. Get into some of those on the dog supplies. The other thing that I would recommend is dressing in layers. It's not uncommon to have days like, well, today while you're out there in the woods, where you start out and it's 20 degrees, and then by noon it's almost 50. And so if you started out bundled up for 20 degrees early in the morning, you're going to be sweating come 11. And so if you've got a jacket and a hoodie and things like that, you can peel off a layer and be able to continue on a happy hunt. And then the last thing is going to be the dog supplies. And honestly, these are probably some of the most important because the dog can't really bring his own supplies. So you need to make sure that you have your collar just in case you get into something that you need to be able to retrain or retain your dog. So you have your collar and a leash. I have a first aid kit, and a lot of the same supplies are good for people as they are with dogs. Plenty of water. Not every hunt is going to come across a body of water with drinkable water for your pal. So you need to make sure you have that. And then I also use a tracking collar. If you look up on my vest there's a little black device, and that's my side of it. And then he's wearing a collar that has this antenna. And with that collar, I'm able to kind of give him a little beep, beep noise that he knows, hey, come on back. If he's getting into something he's not supposed to, I can actually make it vibrate so that vibration will make him kind of back away from that. And it is an e-collar, so it has all of those features as well if it had to go to that. But generally, that's just more for training than it is for hunting. But so you have all of this stuff and you're dressed right. So now it's time to get into the field. Well, where do we go? Where do we hunt? Well, luckily, the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation makes it pretty easy for you. If you go to our website, we have plenty of hunting resources page like you'll see there. And our website, awesomely enough, is just wildlifedepartment.com. I don't know how we got lucky and landed that URL, but I like it. I know. We are the wildlife. So if you click up at the top, if you want to learn about licensing or fishing or hunting, you can click on any of those. So obviously we're talking about hunting, and we can click on that and bring up this drop-down menu. And if we wanted to find out more about quail and pheasant or any other type of hunting in Oklahoma, you can click that hunting resources tab. Today, we're going to talk about that where to hunt tab. The hunting resources will take you to things like this quail hunting page in the background, but the where to hunt will take you to things like our wildlife management areas and our OLAP properties. So up across the top is a list of all the different links that you can see on that page. Today, I mainly want to focus on those major public lands. So on the left-hand side are our wildlife management areas, and on the right-hand side are our Oklahoma land access properties. So the difference between those is the wildlife management areas are managed or owned by the wildlife department. On the other side of it, and let me back up on that, some of them are owned by Corps of Engineers, some of them are owned by major landowners like Weyerhaeuser in the southeast. So it kind of depends on where you're going, but at the end of the day, they're a little bit different than OLAP. OLAP is properties that are private parcels that are leased out by the department to be able to give public access. And so we were able to add thousands and thousands of acres to our private lands that are available for all of you to be able to go in and access. There is one little trick that I don't tell everybody. But if you go through on that OLAP properties page and you're clicking through them on just random ones, you'll start to see little infographics like this pop up. And this has all the details of that specific OLAP property. So this was just kind of a random one that it was the first one that I clicked on that mentioned quail. So I'm not trying to guide anyone towards this one or anything, but it shows you that this property's open from September to May. It's standard access, so just walk-in access. It's 120 acres. And the species, this is where I really want to try to key in. On this one, it says deer, turkey, dove, and quail. So someone from our OLAP program put those in there, and they didn't just guess normally. Normally, they've seen some sign if they were looking for deer sign. They've seen a turkey, they heard a quail, they saw some dove on the high line as they were driving in. So they've observed those animals in and around that property. So you can kind of help use that when you're trying to figure out where you want to hunt. That also helps. And dead cedars never hurts also. So this is really kind of a good one to go off of. But it does tell you the main cover type. So that would tell you if it was an ag field or if it was wheat or whatever it was. The OLAP ID is just the name of that one. It is open to public. And then there is a comment on this one that says that you should access it via the northeast corner. So there's probably, if you zoom in, a little graphic that shows you you're supposed to park right there. So all of that is right there, handy for you and easy to answer your questions. So now we've learned we're going to go to this property in general. How do we find these birds? I want you to imagine a soda can, but not just any soda can, a soda can with legs, because that's going to be about the size of an adult bobwhite quail. So if you're going through a property and you see that it looks like that on the top, where it's just really, really dense grasses that are hard for even us to walk through, there's probably not a lot of resources there for quail. Same thing could be said on that graphic on the bottom. That property is obviously pretty in an arid region. There's not a lot of cover. It's been heavily grazed. So we want some type of a balance between those two. Something like this. This is definitely a property that I would dump a dog out on. I had to go to different states to be able to find this picture because I really try to not hotspot and tell people exactly where the birds are. It's part of the fun is finding. But if you found yourself on a parcel of public land that looked like this, or land that you had permission to go and hunt on, you would find yourself going, well, how do I want to go about this? I'm probably not going to go hunt all of this super green in the background because there's not a lot of cover in that. And by cover, quail and pheasant have different needs. Think of it kind of like your own house. So they're going to need escape cover. They're going to need that safe place like our bedrooms where we can just kind of run to and be alone and just be safe. They need the kitchen. They need where the food and the groceries are. They need a bathroom. They need a place to go do that kind of stuff. But they also need loafing cover, kind of like our living room and that big comfy lazy boy recliner. We want to make sure that we have all of these different components there so that the birds have what they need. This property definitely has all of those things. So if I was going to want to hunt this property, I might start right where the picture is taken from and go along this ridge to the left or along the ridge to the right, or even right down through the valley and below. Each one of those little green blobs that you see are going to be a shrub thicket of some sort. And those shrubs are the escape cover that quail typically try to run to. Kind of like their bedrooms, exactly. A mix of the bedroom and the living room. It's everything that they need. And there's usually a lot of groceries right there around there for them too. Quail and pheasant are typically eating a bunch of seeds in the wintertime, and throughout the spring and summer, they're eating a lot of bugs. And so all of those weeds that we like to spray in our front yard, all of those are what are good for pollinators and insects, and then are ultimately really good for quail and pheasant. So, do you think our soda can with legs could run around in that? Absolutely. I would definitely take my little technician out on that property that looks like that. So hypothetically, this is from one of our public lands. Again, I won't say where, but it is in Northwest Oklahoma. Imagine that you pull up on something like this, or you're even trying to plan a hunt, just zoomed in on a property, and this is what you find. Well, how do you even go about planning this adventure? I kind of like to imagine it like this, where I've parked my vehicle up in that far northwest corner, kind of north central part of the map. And from there, depending on the wind, if it's blowing from the south, I might make that cut to the east first and then go south. If it's coming from the north, I might park further south on the road and then work into it. Dogs operate by looking for what we call a cone of scent. And so if you think about, if you haven't had a shower and you're getting a little stinky, people downwind from you are going to smell you easier than the folks that are off to either side of you. Same thing for the birds. Birds have a very unique smell, and the dogs are able to key in on that. So if you walk your dog kind of in that zigzag pattern along that route, that's where you'll end up bumping into some birds. You'll also note that any of the major shrubby looking thick spots, I've planned this map to kind of go around or bump up to, just so that I know that I'm going to be putting my dog in the best situation to be able to bump into some birds. And hopefully my dog is kind of zigzagging back and forth across my line as I'm going, if he's working right that day. And again, hopefully you come out of it with a bird in hand. Ultimately, learning to hunt quail, it's a special kind of hunt, and it's not about filling a freezer. We go hunt deer, and if you got all of the deer that you were allowed in a year, you might need a new freezer, because that's going to really fill up. You're going to have a lot of food out of that. But hunting quail and pheasant has never been about filling the freezer. It's more about getting out into the field, watching your dogs work, and enjoying times with friends and your four-legged companions. I hear a lot of times hunters frustrated about not finding more birds than they are. But honestly, that's part of the challenge. And that's part of the legacy of upland bird hunting. It's also part of the frustration and all that fun stuff too, but it definitely goes with it. So if you're new to the sport, I strongly recommend that you check out some of our NGO partners for mentor hunts and opportunities to get out in the field. National Wild Turkey Federation that Casey's with does a ton of work with mentor hunts. We also have Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever here in the state that's very active, and they do a ton of mentor hunts, and both of them yeah. Absolutely. Both of them have some sort of women in the outdoors theme stuff. If you don't want to hear from some schmuck like me, it makes it a much easier place to be able to learn about and really just kind of start to form your tribe, if you will, of like-minded folks that want to get out there and have some fun. So ultimately, I will say get out there, no matter if it's quail hunting, pheasant hunting, deer hunting, or just going out for a walk on our outdoors. Get out there and do it. Enjoy the Oklahoma outdoors. Work some ground, trust your dog, and make a memory, because the outdoors are always open. So with that, I will ask if there are any questions. Hopefully there are some good ones. Okay.
So I think the biggest question that I would have is, do I have to have a dog to hunt upland game?
You don't have to. It definitely makes it easier. So if we think about it, where the dog's doing most of the work, if the dog's out there, there are definitely areas where you could go and focus in on just kind of walking to some of that shrub habitat. I don't know how many times I've been deer hunting and have found a covey of birds. They always give you a little bit of a heart attack.
I was gonna say, I've flushed many a bird just walking to my deer stand, and it scares me every time.
I was dragging a deer off of the Beaver River a couple of years ago and found 2 coveys dragging a deer. And there was nothing worse, because I was out of breath. I was already getting,
Then your adrenaline goes,
yeah. Gave me another 5 more steps to be able to drag that deer. So, but no, so you don't need a dog. It definitely makes it easier.
Maybe getting one, or just find somebody that has one. That Quail and Pheasant Forever, that NGO, there's a lot of people with bird dogs, and that's a really good way to get connected with somebody, kind of watch and see if that's something that you would be interested in investing in before you were going to pursue that, because it's a lot of training. That's a lot of time and investment up front for the benefit of having them in the field.
And with that, each dog kind of works a little bit differently. And so, for instance, my dog Carson, he's a German short hair pointer. Typically, those are very big running dogs. So if you're out on a big wide open WMA in the northwest part of the state, that might be perfect for you. But if you're trying to bird hunt in, say, southeastern Oklahoma in some pine timber land, having a dog that's 300 yards away, the dog might see a bunch of birds, but you're probably not going to. So just knowing kind of what your limitations are and how far out you want to hunt, everybody kind of has their own opinion on that. But ultimately, everybody kind of finds the way that works for them. So with that, I'm not a guy that's going to say there's this bird dog and that's the only kind. If your dog can find you birds, it's a bird dog. And in my opinion, it's a very good bird dog. So
Yeah. I think I went on a couple hunts where our guide, it was a guided hunt over at Prairie Prime. And he had a lab, he had a Brittany, he had a German short haired, and then he had some other dog, a Gryffindor.
Griffon.
That's Harry Potter, Gryffindors.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of different breeds out there. A couple years ago, I haven't figured out the punchline yet, but we had a German short hair, a lab, and a poodle walking into the prairie. And by the time that we got back, I think the people had walked about 14 miles. I don't know how many miles the dogs had covered, but that poodle was still working its tail off to be able to go try to find some birds. I think the lab had quit about a half mile back. My short hair was like at my ankle, just wanting to get back to the truck to lay down. So there's definitely a lot of different variabilities that are in there. But anybody that has been around dogs and is a dog person, it's just another excuse to have another pup running around. So, and believe it or not, they can make good inside dogs. My short hair is an inside dog. He's a family dog. He curls up on the couch with us, and he still goes and finds me birds. So I cannot complain there.
Good to have the best of both worlds. I know some people that just have their hunting dogs and they kind of have their own little separate space for them and they don't really socialize with them. So it's good to know that you can do that too.
Yeah, and that was just big for me and my family, is to be able to have that dog a part of the family more than just a tool. But there's nothing wrong with either viewpoint of that. Earlier you had brought up talking about some of the those booms and busts in the weather cycle. So I don't know if I can do this. I'm going to try it real quick if y'all bear with me.
I might, while you're looking for that, I might ask if Jacob had anything to add to the regulation side if he was available to chat. He works Lincoln County, so we don't really we have quail, some. We had some on our property, and then, but he doesn't work any pheasant.
Can you hear me?
That's not the location.
Yeah,
yes, we can hear you.
Okay, sorry about that. I'm trying to handle a call too. No, Tell, great job on the regulations. I really don't have anything. One thing I would stress when you're out there, usually you're in, public groups, you have multiple people hunting at the same time. Just be super careful of what you're shooting at and what's beyond it. That's the number one thing. You're responsible for every trigger pull that you do. You're responsible for what comes out. So when you're hunting these things, it's a lot of fun. It's a great social event, but just be super careful. We don't want to shoot somebody. We don't want to shoot a dog. We don't want to shoot a truck. It's easy to get excited when that bird gets up, but just be super cautious on that. Other than that, Tell, great job on the rigs.
Appreciate that. Stay safe out there. It's always fun to do teaching and handle the call at the same time. That's right. So I'm going to see if this will work. Y'all bear with me. Kind of, not really. So
we can see it, but we can't read it.
Gotcha. So if you can see the colors, that says about everything you need to know. This is our El Nino and La Nina transition. So if you've paid much attention to the weather over, the last few months, you've heard El Nino a whole bunch. And so if you take it back to what those two are, El Nino is a period of wetter and cooler weather, and La Nina is a period of drier and warmer weather. So like that big drought that we've just been in for the last 3 years, that was driven by a La Nina weather pattern. So I'm going to try to do this too. That big spike right there, you guys may be seeing it backwards, but that big spike is 2016. So that big spike that Casey pointed out on the map there. So 2016 was a big El Nino year. And with that, we had what I'm going to call this year a bump. So we had a little bit of an increase as we transitioned from that drier and warmer into the wetter and cooler time period. And so we usually see a little bit of a bump during that with our bird numbers. If we can maintain this El Nino weather pattern, we will actually start to see a little bit more of that increase over the next couple of years, fingers crossed. And yeah, it'll be really good.
We have a question here from Phoebe and Lola. Says, do you have any tips on etiquette when encountering other hunting parties? We don't want to be obvious newbies.
Absolutely. That's a really good question. So first that I would say is just be aware of your surroundings. That's where really one of those key factors of having your hunter orange on and just looking out for other hunter orange around you. I've definitely been in situations on public land where I'm out looking for a bird. I know I've got a bird down and another dog shows up. And I know it's a bird dog because he's got the collar. I haven't seen the person yet though. So I'm going to stop hunting at that point because I don't know where that other person is and I know there's one around. So I don't want to say common sense because it seems like common sense has become more and more uncommon. But if you're out there and you see something that's off, stop kind of what you're doing until you've figured out what's going on. Now, I'm also not going to be walking around a whole bunch then because if there are birds around, I don't want to flush birds and not be able to shoot on them. For instance, I'll just kind of walk through what I did on that situation where the dog showed up. I was on Drummond Flats and I was pheasant hunting. Drummond Flats is definitely one of our primary public lands for pheasant hunting. With that, I know I have a bird down and another dog has shown up. So I got my dog on the leash and so I kept him because I don't know if this dog's friendly or if he's been around other dogs or any of that fun stuff. And then I started looking around and I could hear his collar on point. And so I knew there was somebody going to be coming around to see where this bird was on point at. And at that point, the other hunter had actually spotted me and he said, "Hey, I'm over here." And I said, "Okay, well, your dog's on point. I've got a bird down in the area. Do you mind if I check that?" "No, go ahead." And I ended up going over there and it was a completely different rooster that neither one of us got a shot at because we were just trying to figure out what was going on. But after that situation, I said, "Man, I appreciate that. You have a wonderful day and happy hunting." And we both kind of went our separate ways. It's pretty obvious how different people will hunt in the field, whether that is going out in a line with their buddies and just kind of marching through a field, if that's kind of zigzagging back and forth. But the general kind of the etiquette would be the same as if you were deer hunting. If you pulled up to a spot and there's already a vehicle, there's a dog box in the back, so there's ice chests and coolers, they've got a Quail Forever sticker on the back glass, they're probably quail hunting. So just move on up to the next parking spot or find you a different area so that you can kind of have an area to yourself to be able to safely hunt. Yeah. But that is a really good question also.
And it's totally okay to look like newbies too. There's nothing, we all got to start somewhere. I would be a newbie out there too.
So
I've done lots of hunting, but I'm not savvy in quail and pheasant.
Well, and I'll be completely honest. I'm a late onset hunter. I'm a late bloomer as far as hunting goes. So I actually grew up in a home that was not hunting. My mom was never a big fan of hunting. She just didn't quite understand how hunting could play a role in making more of an animal. Why are we going to have to go take some out to make more? But thanks to schooling and all that stuff, I was able to kind of talk with her about those reasons. And by the time I was in high school, I got to go on my first hunt. And so it wasn't until I was, I think, a sophomore in high school that I did my first turkey hunt. Yeah. So I only came away with 3 feathers, which turns out is not turkey hunting, or is not a whole turkey. But so there's definitely no reason to be ashamed or worried about people knowing you're a newbie. Honestly, I would much rather take a newbie hunting than I would take someone who's got 30 years of experience. The person that's had 30 years probably doesn't need the same type of guidance as someone that's new. And if they've been doing it 30 years, they probably don't need the help. I would much rather help to recruit somebody new and get them just as passionate about bird hunting as I am and as our agency is. So for sure.
Our homeschool kids over there, you guys got any questions for us?
They've been taking notes. I
saw a pen and paper. I don't know how it goes up there in Texas with quail and pheasant.
Yeah.
They got a decent amount there?
There's a decent amount. It's definitely restricted to 5-minute place. You guys got any questions?
I seen that you mentioned like archery stuff, and I got these are like
Oh.
supposed to be small broadheads.
Absolutely.
Or I didn't know if they were like something you could use or
They are.
their shape.
I like it.
Yeah, so those
'cause
types
they-
of points are designed to keep the arrow from going through your animal. So they're designed to kind of just hit the animal, if you will, other than like with a deer, you want to actually go through with your arrow. So those
Yeah.
types of field tips are typically what you would want to use when going to hunt. If you've watched shows like Alone or any of those kind of survival shows, you'll actually see those types of arrowheads being used for arrow point. I don't remember exactly what those types are called, but
Well, I used to call them like bludgeoning tips, but that's not quite what they are
Yeah.
either. Jacob has I think there's some handmade ones out of like coat hangers.
right.
They do not store well and they're the bane of my existence because you can't, they're in the corner somewhere and they fall out. But you can
Yes.
talk on those how you make, they're much same concept but much bigger claws.
Right.
Yeah, so it's kind of, they actually make broadhead specific to birds that have kind of a blade. So usually when you're hitting those pheasants, you're wanting the blunt impact and you're wanting to take out the wings. They make those bigger broadheads with the blades. I mean, they'll take the wings clean off. They also make deals that you can screw on to field tips, and you actually take your field tip, screw it in there, and then there's like, metal band around it. I don't know if y'all already said that or not, but
Yeah, there's all sorts.
I mean,
of
they're
them.
pretty handy. It's not rocket science.
Did you make
It's
those
not
ones
fun.
out of coat hangers?
Yeah, I made any sort of stiff wire you can drill through a field point, put them through there. It just gives you a little more surface area. You do have to have a little heavier poundage of bow because that's all blunt. I mean, you're not getting any cutting out of that. It's all just blunt trauma, but they work. I've harvested some birds with them.
Yeah, small game tip. Yeah, so Daniel
Yeah.
threw it in there. So they're definitely really good and they're handy to have. Be prepared if you're going to go after them with archery equipment. You're probably going to lose some arrows.
Yeah.
I would definitely make sure I've got like bright pink, bright
flashing.
orange, some type of bright, not natural color that's going to definitely stand out against everything around you in the landscape. But no,
Yeah.
great questions.
It gets expensive quick, and that's why I don't do it anymore.
Yeah.
If you don't want a coat hanger.
Or yeah, you got to do what you got to. Did you guys have another question?
How much do you have to be pulling on a bow to go out pheasant hunting with a bow?
So there's not a poundage restriction as far as the like specifics for the equipment. But do you guys do any like the archery in the schools programs?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Okay.
We just pretty
So-
much just shoot in the yard a lot.
Fair enough. I like it.
I'm
So
more,
what poundage is your bow?
my Matthews, which it's my compound bow. I'm pulling 40 something pounds, and then I have an old recurve like PSC Thunder bow or something. I can't remember. It's just an old
20.
recurve bow. It's
That's
pulling like
close
20
then.
pounds.
No, so yeah, your compound that you have would
Yes,
be
sir.
that would definitely cover it. For the recurve side or the longbow, anything really above 25, if you're using the tips that you guys showed me, should be able to make an impact. Get you.
Yeah, keep in mind.
But the reason why that's because my recurve bow, it's more of a competition bow than it is a hunting bow.
Right.
But he's got to go to the butcher shop today to get something done. He got like a new sight or something. He's got to get fixed up. I was gonna ask if they could put because I know you can swap the limbs out on the bows to make them more of a. They pull more if you put a thicker limb on it or something like that.
Yep.
I didn't know if they still made them because the bow's really old.
Right.
I don't know if they even make the limbs, but if they
That
can
is-
make it, because I thought it'd be cool to try to go out and shoot something with a recurve.
So you can definitely do that. Daniel in the chat also mentioned flu arrows. Those are going to be the arrows that have the really strong feathers. They're basically uncut from trimmed. There's usually more of them, and they're designed to cause more drag on the arrow. And so even if you were using a higher poundage bow, depending on what type of arrow rest you have and all sorts of other stuff there, but you could use those flu
I don't know,
arrows.
it's just
Absolutely.
They're a lot easier probably to see in the field too, because
They are.
those feathers that they're larger. There's more of them, not fleshy or as fleshing, and they're a lot of times brightly colored.
Right. Yep. But if you've got something like a whisker biscuit on your bow to be able to use that as an arrow rest, they will shred your fluke arrows. So you definitely want some sort of standard drop away or just stable rest to be able to use it. But definitely, it sounds like you
Like
guys
on my
shop to be a good resource for that.
because on my recurve bow, it's just got like it's got a simple rest where the bow's just been trimmed out,
Yep.
and that one spot where your arrow just kind of laid on it. It's got, and then on my compound, I'm gonna buy a fall away rest, but it's shooting a whisker biscuit right now.
Yeah, your recurve would be solid for that, but you need that drop away.
Well, awesome. I again want to say thank you to everybody for tuning in and taking part of this Learn to Hunt seminar. Hopefully we can get this one uploaded on the website, and you guys can see yourself there as well as being able to kind of go back over some of the things that we've talked about.
They've been featured multiple times on all these recordings so far. I love that you guys tune in for your this being part of the class for you guys. So thank you guys for hopping on. And as always, like Tal mentioned, this is going to be recorded. So you can always go to our YouTube channel, Outdoor Oklahoma, and you can go to our Learn to Hunt playlist and rewatch this. Share the link with any friends that you think would benefit from it. And if you have any other questions, I'll send a follow-up email with the recording. It takes me a while to get it trimmed down and buffered or whatever they call it, but I will send Tell's information in that as well. And then next week, I do believe next Wednesday, we have a waterfowl class. So if you guys are available to join on that, we would love to see you. And then the week after that, I think it's rifle season.
Yeah.
So we'll be talking deer rifle. Yeah. It is hunting season. So we sure appreciate everybody jumping on, and we hope to see you next time. And thank you to our speakers, both Jacob and Tal here, for spending time with us and teaching us a little bit about quail and pheasant hunting. I know I learned a lot. So
good stuff. Thanks for having us, and can't wait to see everybody out in the field. And like she said, feel free to throw me some questions or give me a shout if you have anything that I can help you with. And get out there and work some ground.
Yeah, exactly. And I always try to mention we have a new feature called the tailgate where you can upload your harvest. And so if you guys go out there, you work your dogs, you hunt with somebody else's dogs. We would love to see your outings and stuff. So please follow those guidelines that we have on there, but submit your photos to the tailgate. And we would love to feature you guys. All right. Y'all have a good rest of your week. Bye-bye.
Thank you. See ya.